the story of my experiments with truth. The reading from the autobiography is presented by Sri Gopalakrishna Gandhi, writer, teacher, and the youngest grandson of Kasturba Gandhi and Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. The words of the Mahatma in the voice of his grandson.
The train reached Maritzburg, the capital of Natal, at about 9 p.m. Biddings used to be provided at this station. A railway servant came and asked me if I wanted one. No, said I have one with me. He went away. But a passenger came next and looked me up and down. He saw that I was a coloured man. This disturbed him. Out he went and came in again with one or two officials. They all kept quiet. Then another official came to me and said, "Come along, you must go to the van compartment." "But I have a first-class ticket." "That doesn't matter," rejoined the other. "I tell you, you must go to the van compartment." I tell you, I was permitted to travel in this compartment at Durban, and I insist on going on with it. "No, you won't," said the official. "You must leave this compartment, or else I shall have to call a police constable to push you out." "Yes, you may." I refused to get out voluntarily. The constable came. He took me by the hand and pushed me out. My luggage was also taken out. I refused to go to the other compartment, and the train steamed away. I went and sat in the waiting room, keeping my handbag with me and leaving the other luggage where it was. It was winter, and winter in the higher regions of South Africa is severely cold. Maritzburg being at a high altitude, the cold was extremely bitter. My overcoat was in my luggage, but I did not dare to ask for it, lest I should be insulted again. So I sat and shivered. There was no light in the room. A passenger came in at about midnight and possibly wanted to talk to me, but I was in no mood to talk. I began to think of my duty. Should I fight for my rights or go back to India? Or should I go on to Pretoria without minding the insults and return to India after finishing the case? It would be cowardice to run back to India without fulfilling my obligation. The hardship to which I was subjected was superficial, only a symptom of the deep disease of colour prejudice. I should try, if possible, to root out the disease and suffer hardships in the process. Redress for wrongs I should seek only to the extent that would be necessary for the removal of the colour prejudice. So I decided to take the next available train to Pretoria. The train reached Charlestown in the morning. There was no railway in those days between Charlestown and Johannesburg, but only a stagecoach which halted at Standerton for the night en route. I possessed a ticket for the coach. As I was regarded as a coolie and looked a stranger, it would be proper, thought the leader, as the white man in charge of the coach was called, not to seat me with the white passengers. There were seats on either side of the coach box. The leader sat on one of these as a rule. Today, he sat inside and gave me his seat. I knew it was sheer injustice and an insult, but I thought it better to pocket it. So, much as I fretted within myself, I prudently sat next to the coachman. At about 3 o'clock, the coach reached Pardikoff. Now the leader desired to sit where I was seated, as he wanted to smoke and possibly to have some fresh air. So he took a piece of dirty sackcloth from the driver, spread it on the footboard, and addressing me said, "Sami, you sit on this. I want to sit near the driver." The insult was more than I could bear. In fear and trembling, I said to him, "It was you who seated me here, though I should have been accommodated inside. I put up with the insult. Now that you want to sit outside and smoke, you would have me sit at your feet. I shall not do so." As I was struggling through these sentences, the man came down upon me and began heavily to box my ears. He seized me by the arm and tried to drag me down. I clung to the brass rails of the coach box and was determined to keep my hold, even at the risk of breaking my wrist bones. The passengers were witnessing the scene, the man swearing at me, dragging and belabouring me, and I remaining still. He was strong, and I was weak. Some of the passengers were moved to pity and exclaimed, "Man, let him alone, don't beat him." "No fear," cried the man, but he seemed somewhat crestfallen and stopped beating me. He let go my arm, swore at me a little more, and asking the Hottentot servant who was sitting on the other side of the coach box to sit on the footboard, took the seat so vacated. I reached Johannesburg quite safely that night. I asked the cabman to drive to Muhammad Qasim Kamaruddin's shop. Here I found Abdul Ghani Sheikh expecting me, and he gave me a cordial greeting. He had a hearty laugh over the story of my experiences. "However did you expect to be admitted to a hotel?" he asked. "Why not?" I asked. "You will come to know after you have stayed here for a few days. Only we can live in a land like this, because for making money we do not mind pocketing insults, and here we are." With this he narrated to me the story of the hardships of Indians in South Africa. He said, "This country is not for men like you. Look now, you have to go to Pretoria tomorrow. You will have to travel third class." Sheikh Abdul Ghani had come to see me off at the station. I took my seat in a first-class compartment and the train started. At Germiston, the guard came to examine the tickets. He was angry to find me there and signalled to me with his finger to go to the third class. I showed him my first-class ticket. "That doesn't matter," said he. "Remove to the third class." There was only one English passenger in the compartment. He took the guard to task. "What do you mean by troubling the gentleman?" he said. "Don't you see he has a first-class ticket? I do not mind in the least his travelling with me." Addressing me, he said, "You should make yourself comfortable where you are." The guard muttered, "If you want to travel with a coolie, what do I care?" and went away. At about 8 o'clock in the evening, the train reached Pretoria. Next morning, I called on the attorney, Mr. A.W. Baker. Abdullah Sheikh had given me some description of him, so his cordial reception did not surprise me. He received me very warmly and made kind inquiries. I explained all about myself. During the very first interview, Mr. Baker ascertained my religious views. I said to him, "I am a Hindu by birth, and yet I do not know much about Hinduism, and I know less of other religions. In fact, I do not know where I am and what is and what should be my belief. I intend to make a careful study of my own religion and as far as I can of other religions as well." Mr. Baker was glad to hear all this and said, "I have built a church at my own expense and deliver sermons in it regularly. I am free from colour prejudice. We meet at 1 o'clock every day for a few minutes and pray for peace and light. I shall be glad if you will join us there. So I shall expect you here tomorrow at 1 o'clock and we shall go together to pray," added Mr. Baker as we said goodbye. I had little time for reflection just yet. It was now dark. I went to my room and lay there absorbed in deep thought. What, I thought, can be the meaning of Mr. Baker's interest in me? What shall I gain from his religious co-workers? How far should I undertake the study of Christianity? How was I to obtain literature about Hinduism? And how was I to understand Christianity in its proper perspective without thoroughly knowing my own religion? I could come to only one conclusion. I should make a dispassionate study of all that came to me and deal with Mr. Baker's group as God might guide me. I should not think of embracing another religion before I had fully understood my own.
You just heard the reading from the autobiography of Mahatma Gandhi, presented by Shri Gopala Krishna Gandhi, the youngest grandson of Kasturba Gandhi and Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi.
This was a contribution of All India Radio World Service.
Charles' mother saw them both talking. How are you, Mohan?
Hi Charles, how are you? I am fine.
Then Charles' mother went to principal's office to talk about Charles and Gandhiji.
See, sir, that black boy is talking to my lovely child.
Mohan, how dare you talk to Charles? Don't you know the rules of the school? Ma'am, now you have the right to punish this boy. It's your choice what to do with this boy.
Just kick him out of the school.
Gandhiji comes back to India after completing his studies from another school. यार देखो क्या हलचल मचा रखी है, हर रोज आ जाते हैं, सामान चुरा ले जाते हैं।
अरे पापा, ये हलचल सिर्फ अब कुछ ही दिनों की बची है। मैं अपने देश को बचाकर ही रहूंगा।
बोलना आसान है लेकिन करना मुश्किल है।
Gandhiji goes in public and talk to people.
सुनो सुनो, छोड़ो ब्रिटिशर्स का सामान ब्रिटिशर्स के बस।
इससे होगा क्या उनका? उनके पास तो इतने पैसे हैं।
उनका मनोबल टूटेगा।
Britishers call Gandhiji to talk. Stop your protest now or you will be killed.
If you kill me, the thousands of Gandhis will get both.
Of you people, we are leaving this country forever.
Hi, I'm Anamma Jacob, studying in JMC in BLEd second year. In my view, the pandemic has impacted each and every person, and the lockdown was first started in March and then it continuously goes up to 4 to 5 months. Everyone was isolated in their home and there was no way of communication other than telephone or internet. At first 2 to 3 months there was a lot more panic situation about various aspects, be in health or daily wage workers were worried about their transportation and wages, and food was a major concern during this lockdown time, as all ration shops and wholesale shops were closed. People were concerned about food. The CBSE students were also facing problem as their exams were left. The DU students were also facing problems in aspect of exams, as there was an announcement of open book exams for students of DU. And after the announcement, there was a more panic situation created among the students and teachers as well, as and because everyone do not have a good internet connections at their homes, and it would be very difficult if the open book exams are conducted in an online mode. And so the teachers and many student parties of DU were against that, and they stick to their argument for a very long time, and finally the exams got cancelled. So we are very thankful to the teachers and the students, whoever have strongly stick to their opinions about cancelling the exams and promoting the students on their internal basis. For some people, the isolation was very boring as they were getting very bored living at their homes. But for me, it was not boring. I get to know more about myself, my family members, and I spend a lot of time talking to my family. And other than just looking at my phone, I developed a cooking habit also, and I watched many news channels for new government updates. I was listening music, reading stories, etc. In this lockdown period, we were all spiritually bounded together, and we were all praying together that all goes well. We were praying for health and prosperity. A feeling of togetherness is all over the nation, and I had seen many instances in which people were helping the cops who are checking in roads. They were giving the cops the tea and the snacks so that they get boosted up a little and do their work without getting tired so much. And they were cooking these tea and snacks with full precautions, wearing their masks on. The doctors, nurses and all health workers and the policemen, all those who take their lives at risk and were serving the nation, we will be ever grateful for their help. I am very proud of that nation where professionals are very hard working selflessly day and night for the nation. I am very happy that my classes had started, be it in online mode, but still we get to connect. And the pandemic is not over yet. We have to maintain social distance and must avoid ourselves from going to public places. And if we have to go in any case, then we must wear our own masks, and we must follow all the precautions that are given by the government, and or else the case would increase. Thank you.
Destination India. An audio tour of a mesmerizing place of incredible India.
Jaisalmer, a golden city of Rajasthan, was founded by the Rajput king Maharaval Jaisal Singh during the 12th century. Jaisalmer originally means the hill fort of Jaisal, but it is also known as the Golden City. The city offers a variety of special Rajasthani food items like mirchi bada, ker sangri, kadi pakoda, murg e sabz, bhanon aloo and a lot more. The ideal time to visit the city is from October till March. Outdoor activities like desert safari, camel ride are open during the season. Jaisalmer is well connected with roadways, railways and airways. A special luxury train, Palace on Wheels, can also be used to reach Jaisalmer. Jodhpur Airport is the nearest. To hang around within the city, bicycles and auto rickshaws are equally good transport options. The adventure sports like dune bashing and off-roading is popular among thousands of people looking for something different. Jaisalmer catches our attention with yellow sands, pink and red forts, Arabian night dances and daylight hues. The popular street markets of Jaisalmer offers a variety of carved wooden products, jewellery, shawls, carpets, souvenirs, hand-embroidered shoes, antiques, traditional scarves and dupattas, all at reasonable prices. Sam Sand Dunes, one of the catchiest portion of the city, gives us a glimpse of the picturesque sunset on the desert along with a safari on camelback. In February and March, a unique desert festival gets organized where Jeep Safari is among the most famous. Jaisalmer Fort, made of the yellow sandstone, is among the largest forts in the world. It seems more like a mirage because of its unusual Rajasthani architecture, also commonly known as the Golden Fort of Rajasthan. Gadisar Lake, the surroundings of the banks of this lake, has holy shrines, Jain temples and chhatris. The serene atmosphere around the lake with stunning view of the sunset and sunrise makes the place even more special. The magnificent Havelis and palaces of Jaisalmer cannot be missed. One of them is Patwon Ki Haveli, which gives a feeling of royal exuberance. All the walls of this 5-storied building are intricately decorated. It has 5 extremely luxurious suites with huge corridors. The decorations are excellent representation of Rajasthani art. The grandeur and architecture of this monument reminds us of the cultural heritage of Jaisalmer. The Thar Heritage Museum will show you the history, culture and art of Great Thar Desert. Old documents, coins, ancient manuscripts, weapons which once were a part of the city are all on display in this museum. The Great Jain Temple is a must visit as it holds the idol of Lord Parshvanath made from rare black stones. November to March is the ideal time to visit But April to August attracts budget travellers as off-season discounts are available. Jodhpur Airport is the closest domestic airport. Jaisalmer is well connected with a wide network of trains covering most of the Indian cities. The journey by road or self-drive is also enjoyable, but make sure to break the journey in other cities of Rajasthan. The program was conceptualized and produced by Monica Gulati with assistance in production by Savita Khera. The script was by Savita Kapoor. The narrator Albina Michael.
Do tune in to our next edition of Destination India for another exciting journey.